communicating. This is a soliloquy. One person understands, the other person doesn't. Curse of knowledge. When I came to Mauritius for the first time, and if they'd looked at my CV, of course, all my life I've been involved in education. And they said to me I should meet MBA. Now how the hell do I meet MBA? I've lectured on MBA courses. I did not know that MBA means the Mauritius Bankers Association. How the hell am I meant to know that? Meet MBA. I thought, oh, what the hell is this? How do you meet MBA? This is simply the curse of knowledge. Mind blindness again. They know, they assume I know. That is not communicating. So let's get that point very, very clear initially. Communicate. Factor in somebody else. Alright? Please factor in also that it may come to somebody like me who doesn't happen to be Mauritian and I don't understand French. Okay? It may, fortunately or unfortunately, end up on my desk. I think, what the hell is this? If I can't read what it is, I'm not going to be able to employ you. I can't comment. So, clarity. Let's communicate, if you like, in a clear way. I have lectured people from University of Cambridge, University of Oxford, and nobody thanks you for intellectualizing anything. They don't want you to bowl it over their heads. The clearer, the simpler it is, the better. All right? So that's the first thing, with communicate your value. Now, the second thing I'd say to you with regard to, so clarity. Second thing is, ask your lecturers to put their hands on their heart and hold the Upanishads or Vedas or the Quran or the Bible or the Torah or whatever your holy book is, and swear that they read every word that you have written in your assignment when they are marking it. Let them swear and say, yes, I do, and if I'm telling a lie, I want to get cancer. You will see how many of them will say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. You know, I've sat many times across the desk and I say to a professor, I've got a student's assignment, and I says, can you mark that for me, please? He's taken 3 months to write the damn thing, something on cross-cultural management, for argument's sake, leadership, whatever it is. And 6 or 7 minutes later, it's 2,500 words. All the referencing is all there, Harvard-style referencing, your introduction, your literature reviews, your critical analysis, the whole lot. 6 or 7 minutes later, he comes back, he says, Mohammed, here it is. I says, you finished? Yeah. How the hell are you going to read 3,500 words in 6 or 7 or 8 minutes? It's just not possible. Not possible. They scan. They read the introduction. They will look at the literature review. They may look a little bit at the critical analysis and then the conclusion. What's the point I'm making? If you think every employer will read every word in your CV, well, then you're living in a different country. You're living in a year. It will take about 10 to 15 seconds. Factor this in, please. All right? Just make sure what you're writing is clear, the type of font or whatever the line spacing is appropriate. Aesthetically, it looks good. If I asked one of these pretty girls here I'll take you out to Hennessy Park for a drink in the happy hour on Friday, you might spend an hour and a half, 2 hours putting on the lipstick, the eyeshadow, the mascara, combing the hair, whatever it is. And that will be for a couple of hours. There's an enormous amount of pride that you take to go out for a couple of hours. You'll make sure your clothing is appropriately ironed, etc. The presentation is immaculate. That's for 2 hours. And you take that care. And for your CV, which really represents you, could represent you for life, you take about 10 minutes. It's twisted, the fonts are all over the place, it doesn't look good. I can't understand, I cannot reconcile that. I take you out for a drink and I'm taking you out for a drink for 2 hours. Your CV represents you for life. You haven't bothered to reread it. You look at it, it doesn't look good. Now if it doesn't look good to you, clearly it's going to have no chance when it comes to somebody like me. Aesthetics matter. I'm not telling you to go and dress up when you go to Hennessy Park or wherever. I'm not telling you that. By all means do. I wasn't born at this age. I was young once as well. I used to be your age many years ago. But I'm simply saying this is a document that could represent you for life. You may spend up to 50 years of your life in a job now. Gone are the days where people will be retired when they are 60. Institutions are... Malini's gone? Has Malini gone? Oh, no, sorry. No, it's okay. I was going to tell you something. No, it's all right. Forget it. No, it's okay, darling. No, I was just standing there. I was going to... Okay, no problem. Yeah. I was just going to ask you to come here. I'm saying gone are the days where you just work for 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. The younger people, because people are living longer, you've got to work longer. Someone needs to pay the taxes, you see, to give people a pension, the older people a pensions. So you're going to be in a job for about 50 years. Let's put it that way. All right? Unless, of course, you win the lottery or you marry somebody that's rich. But that apart, you're going to be there for 50 years. And the majority of your waking life is spent at work. Think about it. The majority of your waking life. You work from 9 to 5, for argument's sake. That's 8 hours. But the traveling is another 2 hours. So that's 10. When you go home, you're going to sleep. You probably sleep 8 hours. That's 18. You're going to have to eat, etc., whatever it is. That's the remaining 6 hours gone. You can see the point I'm making. You can see how important the job is to you. It's a nonsense, boys and girls. It's a nonsense for people to actually say that you can be happy outside of work. If you're not happy at work, you will not be a happy individual. Let's make that point very clear to you. That's a nonsense. If you're happy in your personal life and unhappy at work, you will be unhappy ultimately. You will spend more time at work than you will with your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, lover, children, whatever it is. You will, because they have to sleep. Think about it. I'm trying to tell you the importance of work. Let's call a spade here. Call a cat a cat. If you're not happy at work, you're not going to be happy in your life. It won't happen. Sooner or later, you'll start taking it out on your partners and your children, etc. Sooner or later. So something will have to give. All I'm trying to say to you is if you recognize how important your job is, and you may think, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are very wealthy, that work is not an important. Papa and Mama will provide for me. Papa and Mama will one day leave this earth. I'm afraid that's the circle of life. People die. People are born, people die. What happens then if your skills are analogous, similar to that of a pet dog? What happens then? Yeah, you're going to be very unhappy. Climbing a mountain is great. When you sometimes get to the top of the mountain, that's when people lose motivation. The climb is always important. If I were to ask those of you with boyfriends and girlfriends, it's always nice when you're chasing, isn't it? And when you got the person, it's another story, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yes? Happens like that. This is why Thomas Carlyle once says, go as far as your eye can see. And when you get there, look again. Go as far as your eye can see. Dream. But then, of course, it's a question when we talk about dreaming. Make sure you can try to realize that dream. Some people dream rather strangely. You know, I will not wake up one morning and close my eyes and then end up by the moon. That's a stupid dream. I'm simply saying set your bar high. I want to become a CEO. I want to become a managing director. I want to become whatever it is. Tell people about it. Because if you don't tell people about it, then how do you drive yourself out? It's only known to you. It's going to be extremely important. You know, this is where when I teach leadership, I tell people strategy. Strategy is where you want to go. That's your dreams. Where you want to be. But if the culture is not right, you will never get there. Which is why Peter Drucker once says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is about behavior, how people behave at work. The way we do things here, as Charlie Handy says. Now, if you don't have the culture right, it will not happen. You can dream all you want. How are you going to behave towards your dreams? You want to end up being a CEO. There is no degree in CEO. I've never seen a BSc Honours Chief Executive Officer. I've never seen something like that. Because that person has to take a holistic approach to everything. From the team making, to the strategy, to the culture. It's the leaders that set the culture. Which is why if you follow on from Peter Drucker, leaders eat culture for breakfast. If you're thinking about culture, I say again, the way we do things here. That's the definition of culture. How do you actually get people to behave to achieve the strategy? How are you going to behave to ensure that you realize your dreams and your goals? There's quite a nice quote. It's your attitude and not your aptitude that determines your altitude. Your attitude. How do you behave? You see, Mauritius has a funny way of Mauritius has a funny culture. Mauritius tends to reward what we call non-performance related activities. Non-performance criteria. I'll tell you what I mean. One of you in here could be a laureate. And you're about 22 now, 22. 40 years from now, someone will be saying, hey, she's very intelligent. She was a laureate. That's 40 years ago. They still say these things. Well, I mean, bloody hell, I studied, I don't know when I finished studying. None of you were born, probably your fathers weren't born. Seriously. How do you know the day when I was studying, they never used to ask you to measure a line? That was the accounting paper, measure a line. You measure the line accurately, you pass. Degrees are a lot harder to get now. But my point is, you reward non-performance criteria. A person can have a PhD done 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's in a narrow area of study. You could have a PhD on why you should have a round door and not a rectangular door. But 25 years from now, somebody will say, he has a PhD, he's very intelligent. Now, this is not right, guys. I'll give you an example, I'll give you an analogy. All of you in here, most of you in here are football fans. Alright? Don't close your ears. Because if business organizations were to copy what football companies do, and football is money, you'll see the whole landscape will change completely. 2 years ago, Liverpool sold Philippe Coutinho for £142 million. Think about that, how much that is in rupees. He went to Barcelona and he did nothing. What happens now? He's gone. Is somebody going to say, but he was the second most expensive player. He has a PhD. He was a laureate. No. It's what you're doing now that matters. Forget 25, 30 years ago. They're the entry points. Your certificate of the entry points gets you in. What you do thereafter is what keeps you in there. This nonsense that you have a PhD and a PhD or whatever. You're not a lecturer, are you? I was going to tell you what PhD means, and I'm not going to tell you anymore. That's a philosophy. philosophy of pull, you can work on the other way. You know, a person was, for example, a CEO of a bank. And a bank has gone during his tenure downwards. But still he gets a job at another bank as another CEO. Why? Because he's got a PhD. They're the entry points, the certificates. You tend to reward non-performance criteria. You know, after, I'm not saying you don't need these qualifications, don't mistake what I'm trying to say, but not for the rest of your life. You know, I'm 150 years old. Why are you not looking what I've done in the last 5 years? Are you going to take me back to when I was studying 100 years ago? No. If I've presided over companies going south, going downwards, nah. Philippe Coutinho, they say now they will take 77 million for him. What he used to do in the past, he doesn't do now. I'm sorry. You're not performing? Well, that's a criteria for low-performing organizations. And this is a problem that we have with the older people when they're leading millennials. When they lead millennials, they want to pay them the same. Sumantra Ghoshal, Professor Sumantra Ghoshal, he's now dead. He used to lecture in INSEAD, London Business School and Harvard graduate. He says the older generation, they control the millennials. Everything is in a contract. You come at 9, you go at 5. I tell you what to do, when to do, how to do. Everything is contract. There's a line manager, you do this, 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 this. Contract, contract, contract. It's in my contract. And after a while, the employee contracts. Contract means get smaller. Your effort becomes less. And then they say to you, you're not innovative. You're not innovative enough. But you are there to control them. You create a culture which, of course, does not foster innovation. I know the topic is this. I'm trying to say to you, in your CV, please say something different. You might end up with people like me, which are simply looking for kids that are innovative. People that are different. Marking assignments are terrible. Boring. Why? Because the lecturer is seeing the things which he knows already. We look for argument. We look for something that is different. Somebody that challenges. If you see the same old thing over and over, you switch off. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You switch off sometimes during your lectures, don't you? You start nodding. When I say nodding, I mean nodding and sleeping, like a goat. Yeah. You're going to engage with the individual. So think about it like that. It's a live document. Because at the end of the day, the party looking at it, it says value there. Is looking what you can bring to the organization. You think I'm looking at your certificate? I'm not. I'd like to, or whether you're a laureate, it says to me that you were, that's the other thing you do here. You confuse academic brilliance with intelligence. They are two different things. Academic brilliance and intelligence are two different things. You could have crammed, look, I've taught on ACCA courses before any of you were born, SEMA courses. And I can tell you what some of the students would do. They wouldn't study during the year, they come to our revision courses. We predict a few questions, they cram the answers, and luckily for them, the questions come up. Boom, they get a distinction. You know, I say for argument's sake, minority protection comes up in company law. Foss and Harbottle, section 994 of the Companies Act 2001. It comes up. Memorize these cases. Clemens and Clemens brothers. Read Cumana. And lo and behold, the bloody thing appears on the exam. Luckily for you, they get a distinction. Send them out later to talk about that syllabus, and they can't. Now the same thing can happen with your HSC as well. You pick a few areas, and luckily for you, it comes up. And you get 100 out of 100. Does that make you an authority? No, it doesn't. And a lot of these certificates sometimes are obtained fortuitously, by accident. You need to get the people to think. Inspire them for lifelong learning at the end of the day. I always tell trainers this when I'm doing train-the-trainers courses. Rabindranath Tagore once says, the object of a teacher is not just to provide explanations, but to knock on the doors of their mind. Get them to think. The Apple slogan is think differently. Get them to think differently. And that's what I'm talking about here. Value. If you see the same thing over and over and over and over, you're not engaging with the party reading the CV. I'm also telling you things here which you can utilize at an interview. All right. So, communicate. Give a backdrop to this. Understand what engages employees, what makes the employers rather, what makes them salivate, what makes them think, hang on, I want that person. Now it's not a perfect word. Let me give you an example where I say think differently. Look, I did not invent and create this notion of a CV and an interview to employ you. I didn't create that. Is it flawed? Oh, hell, it's flawed. Seriously flawed. This notion of employing someone based on a certificate, based on an interview. Seriously flawed. There are loads of research going on at the moment based on two words, confidence and competence. Let me explain what I mean. In Mauritius, if you have a little girl that talks a lot, cheapy man. Ah yes, you talk too much. I have never heard them say that for a little boy. What's up? Is there a chi garso or pima garso? Have you ever heard that? I've been here 3.5 years, guys, and I love your culture, I love your people, I love your country. I think God put me in the wrong place when I was born. I was meant to be born here. I'm getting like Donald Rumsfeld, the American bastard. He said it is not our fault that God put our oil under other people's land. People, you'll see what I mean. He said God put our oil under other people's land. Well, it's applying to me really. I think I was meant to be Mauritian, but maybe God got a bit tired. Dropped me in Guyana, and then onwards to London. They call, I don't hear anything for the boy. Hear anything for the boy? That talks a lot? Yep, 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 yep. What's the point I'm making? Little girls are meant to be seen and not heard. As we say in England, butter shouldn't melt in their mouth. They shouldn't be hot, the cheap ima. And so most girls grow up not being as confident as the boys. Most of them. But at the results, of course, all over the world, if you compare the GCSE results, what you call SC, or the A-level results, the girls are always brighter. Across the board. Always. Do not give me anecdotal evidence. I know somebody's going to put their hand down. 10 boys from Royal College were laureate. That's anecdotal. That is not representative. Don't do that, please. That's the exception to the rule. Taken as a whole, all over the world, the girls are smarter. But what happens when they get up to the CEOs, etc.? I don't know what happens. Even at the results of the universities, the girls get better marks. But what happens afterwards? I don't know what happens. I can tell you what generally happens. You have a problem when it comes to recruiting people. Boys, of course, because they are more confident, they interview better. They fool themselves, that's the definition of confidence in this context that I'm talking about. They fool themselves that they're good, and then they fool others that they're good. They bullshit their way through the interview, all right? Oh yes, I will do what you ask me to do. I will do more. They play with the toolbox, the voice. This is a toolbox. You know, they warm it up. I tell people before you go and talk, you should warm your voice up. I wanted to do it here, but then I thought, you'll be thinking I'm mad. If I started going, and seriously, I do it in an office before I go and teach. You should. You don't want to start talking and a voice comes out all squeaky. You know, this is a powerful tool that we've got. You can manipulate people with it. I can stand here and simply say, I'm extremely passionate about students in the University of Mauritius. And I can say, I'm extremely passionate about students from the University of Mauritius. Which one sounds better? Clearly the second one. You see what I mean? Yes, you can play with people here. I can make you fall in love with me. If you were to listen to me for a couple of hours maybe, I can suddenly start persuading you before I persuade you. They're two different things. There's a professor called Professor Robert Cialdini. Lots of research on persuasion and persuasion. How to get people to say yes. Once again, come back to the interview. Let me give you a persuasion technique. I know I can tell you about your CV, but at the end of the bloody day, you've got to get the job. All right, that's proof of pudding. It can look nice. What are the things when they ask you? Do you want to ask us any question? Or even before? Excuse me, sir. Or madam. Polite inquiry. Could you please tell me, why did you ask me to come to this interview? Even before it starts, what will they do? They will go, bearing in mind what I said earlier on. Maybe they didn't read the CV. Somebody, look, I've chaired a number of interviewing panels. I've not seen the CV before. I sit down in the interview panel and I say, Mr. Khan, the ministry is famous for doing this. Mr. Khan, can you chair this? I say, how many people? 250. I say, no, sorry, that's too much. I'm going to finish that in the next 2021. By that time my contract comes to an end, go back home. I'll interview the second bunch that when you've done a cull, 25 maybe. But at that particular point in time, just as I sit down, because I have other duties, I'm the chief executive of the Financial Services Institute. I'm not chief interviewing officer. I'm not a CIO, I'm a CEO. So at the last moment, when the kid is walking in, I'm glancing at the CV. Yeah? Somebody in HR has prepared them. Now if somebody said to me, Mr. Khan, before you start, would you please, it's the way you ask as well, eh? The way you ask. He just simply says, can I ask a question, sir? Gently, polite inquiry. Why did you get me in here today? I've seen a lot of people outside. Why did you ask me to come here? Now that will force me to look at the CV now. All right? And I may say, I see you were a laureate. Okay, fair enough. I see you've got a first class honors degree. I see you've got an upper second class degree. I like the introduction to your CV. It appears that you have certain skills. You were in the student union. You were elected, so you have some influence. That's leadership, influence, followership. So it forces me now to actually look at the CV. You are persuading me now. Before the interview happens, you're asking me, what made you bring me in here, sir? And that will stay with me as I start asking the questions. That's persuasion. You're getting me in the mood, if you like, before I start asking you the questions as to whether or not I employ you. I'll give you another example of persuasion. If you met me in front of Intermart at Bagatelle, all the girls are, not the boys, and I says, will you go out with me, please, on a romantic date? 100 out of 100 of you will say no. I'm absolutely certain none of you will say yes. Intermart is, or you call it Intermart, okay? Whatever the bloody hell it is. French is a funny language. French is really English without the end. Like my name is Khan, you say Khan. So you don't put flipping N at the end of it. Mango is English, mang becomes French. Banana is English, banana. Where do you go? Guava, guava. Pineapple, look. Anna, I know that. And they look like cabbage, but I'm not that green, as they say. Yeah. French is a fun, Gerard becomes Gerard. I don't know, French, maybe they're lazy, the French. They don't say the end of the, Anyway, Intermart. It's an Intermart. You meet me there, none of you will say, he looks nice, let's go out with him. A hunk of a man. He's even more sexy than Shah Rukh Khan. You're not going to say that. But do you think so? Don't you think I'm more sexy? No, you don't think so? I didn't ask you, mate. He shakes his head. I don't want to be sexy in your eyes, please. Sorry. How will you think, Shay? Sexy, no? There you go. front of Intermart, you're persuaded to buy something in Intermart. You're not persuaded insofar as romance is concerned. I need to condition your mind. Now, if I go in front of a florist, I see you in a flower shop, or I see you where you have bridal gowns. What is it called? Tulsidas? Yeah, is that what it's called? Is it? Tulsidas. You see, your mind at that particular... I'm looking at the girls here. No, you can get it. Your mind is persuaded to romance at that particular point in time. Now the statistics change. I'm talking here about research. You ask 100 girls in a florist, in a flower shop, in a bridal shop, whatever you call it, will you go out with me, with a man that they've never seen before? 40% now said, yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. Yeah, if they're single, that is. You see how the statistics change now? From 0 actually saying yes, to about 40% now saying no, because they're persuaded to romance. You're collecting for a children's charity. You know, some of you, of course, do your NGO work. You're collecting for a children's charity. Take a little child with you. Take a pretty little girl, you know, with braids and all, plaits. And you're not going to know. You'll get a lot more money. A hell of a, I'm telling you. This is persuasion. Trying to get, and as far as you're trying to get people to say yes, the power of influence, trying to, it's leadership in a different way, trying to get people to say yes. So when you sit down with that interviewer, you're trying to get that person to say yes. Okay? Because remember, your job could be for 50 years. Not 50 minutes or 50 days. You're going to work for 50 years, think about it. You guys are about 20 now. By the time they come to, I don't know, 2050 or 2060 or 2070, or I'll be in a different kingdom by then, they're going to make the retirement age about 80. You're going to have to work for quite a while. Just pointing out how important this thing is to you. Okay? Have we got any questions so far? Anything you'd like to ask me? No? You sure? Feel free to disagree with me. Eh? Anything? Disagree with me? No? No problem. Just stop and ask. Okay? You understand what I'm getting at. I tell trainers most of a lot of the time, people forget facts, they never forget understanding. If you understand what I'm getting at, then we're there. Facts people will forget. That's too much structure. In my 33 years of lecturing, guys, I have never lectured with PowerPoints. I lecture as you see me here. I don't have a problem with PowerPoints. But I like the freedom. Alright? I like freedom combined with structure. I don't want too much structure. There will be a PowerPoint up there because I need to show you a CV. I don't even know what the hell is written on it, but you will see the format of it, and then I will take over from there and lecture as you see me here. There is a bit of freedom to it, but I want you to understand the seriousness of what's happening with your CV here and the importance of getting a job that suits you, that you want. Because if you're not happy at work, you will never be happy in life. Let's make that very, very, very clear to you. So no questions. All right? Now, if I had to fight this gentleman here, I mean physically fighting, I won't, because he's much stronger than me and he'll beat the hell out of me. But if, say, I had to because my life depended upon it, then if I had to fight him, in a fair fight he beat me. What I would want to do is to hit him first, to get an advantage. Alright? I want an advantage, I want to whack him around the head first to get an advantage. That's exactly what we're talking about with your CV. In Mauritius, one time the Ministry of Financial Services and Good Governance were interviewing for one analyst post 546 people for one job. There's something wrong here. That's when they asked me to chair the interview. I said, no, sorry mate. 546 people I must interview. Are you mad? No way. But what did it say to me? You see, you're a very smart people. Very qualified people. Loads of certificates. Chasing one job. Sounds a bit like inflation. Demand push inflation. You know how your teachers define inflation? Too much goods chasing, too much money chasing too much goods. Too few goods. Demand push, cost pull is too much. It's another definition of it. But we're not going to get into that now. But you have in effect in a battle with 500 people for one bloody job. You see the extent of the competition that we're dealing with here now. So what do? Your lecturers will tell you that they will look at the introduction. The opening statement is very important. Fundamentally important. That's a hitting first. And not a jab. You're really looking to knock the person out. One big punch at the end of the day. Get across your attitude. Does she put on the CV? This is exactly what you should not do. That opening line you should not do. If I were training traders in here, I would call that a teachable moment. A teachable moment is you celebrate mistakes, where somebody's made a mistake. Because if you know everything I'm going to talk about, what the hell are you here for then? Let people make mistakes. I am keen to follow a career in human resource management. Big mistake. So you're limiting the market. Because you have a degree in HRM. Well, if anybody's got a degree in HRM here now, I don't. But you want us to have a little debate and see who knows more about it? I'm welcome to have a go. You've heard me specialize in teaching law. But I'm happy to have a go on HRM. We can talk about cross-cultural management, organization behavior, culture, leadership, whatever is in there. Let's see who knows more. What's the point I'm talking about here? The point I'm making here is your degree does not make you a specialist. If you pigeonhole yourself into that particular area, you are narrowing the market. A CEO, which is what you should be pitching for, at the top of the mountain, oversees everything. Some of the best bankers in the world are engineers. The best performing fund in the world